It is two pros and a cup of Joe here, though. We do have a potential change in the NFL that could be happening here. You guys would be the perfect people to speak on this. All right? You people would be perfect to speak on this. As former players who have gone through the grind of the NFL offseason into training camp. Apparently, according to Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, the NFLPA is working to finalize a proposal to overhaul the offseason starting as soon as 2025. It would eliminate voluntary on-field work in the spring in favor of a longer training camp ramp-up, with players reporting in mid-June to early July per sources. Now, seems like a long-ass season to me, but what the hell do I know?
Here's what I would say. As a former player, there's pros and cons to all these sorts of decisions. But if you said the NFL is proposing this, correct?
Yeah, NFLPA.
NFLPA is proposing this, which is interesting because if you're proposing this, right, and you're going to the owners saying, we would like to do this, this is one of your bargaining pieces. When we talk about 18 games, how they're trying to get to 18 games, this is one of the ways. And this is one of the ways where the owners go, oh, okay, well, yeah, we'll do that for you guys. Oh, by the way, though, if we're going to do that, you guys have to play an additional game. And we're going to take off one preseason game for you guys. So, it's still going to be the same time frame, but we're going to play more meaningful games instead of these preseason games. That's the problem with putting this out there and using this as a potential negotiation or bargaining chip. Is, as we talked about before, this just shouldn't be something that you should be as focused on if you are if you're a current player, thinking about it for future players, former players. Like, this is just not something that's that important outside of the people that are currently playing in the NFL. Now, but that's the reason why I feel like they're doing this, is because they're creating more space to adjust, move back, adapt the schedule however they need to for a potential of 18 games. And look, back when we played VAR, like, I don't know how you viewed the 6 weeks we got off after OTAs and minicamp that are going on right now. I didn't like it because I felt like you were off, but you kind of weren't. Like, you could have a little bit of fun, but basically after July 4th, like, you were in full training camp mode even though you weren't in training camp yet. Yeah. Like, maybe you didn't report, but your ass was working out every day. You were throwing every day. You were doing everything you could every day to prepare yourself to be ready to, like, kick it into gear as soon as you got into training camp.
Yeah.
And so this allows them to basically take OTAs and minicamp like they have now and the off-season phase 1 training where they work out and meet with the coaches. It basically allows them to shift that into June, July, and then they build into training camp. So it's going to feel like one really, really long season for the players. It'll be an adjustment. But that being said, it probably makes the most sense. So you don't have guys who go to OTAs, minicamp, take those 6 weeks off, and don't do jack squat. They just sit around. They don't come back. They don't come back in shape and ready to go. So it probably makes sense from that standpoint.
As a player, I kind of look at it and I'm like, that's too damn long. As a player, in my mind, I'm like, that's long. Like, June, you check in June. But I think there's this – I think we have to look at it from a mental fixation, a classic conditioning type of approach. Why is it that we look at the length of a season and it's like, oh no, can't do that. That's just way too long. It's like, as athletes, it's like, this is our season. This is the amount of time our season is. This is what we do, and we're in and we're out. It goes to the next season. But it's your job. Like, you're like, in reality, you're actually doing, who knows what your real weeks are in college. I mean, people may not really take the time to really take a step back and think about how monopolized your time is in college. My time was way more monopolized around the calendar year in college than it was in the pros. Now, if you're saying they're going into training camp in June, and if it's not a ramp up, to a training camp, if you're going into a training camp, which, by the way, I hear training camps are no different than OTAs and mini camps at this point anyway. So if it's just a matter of time where you're coming into the facility, you're getting your treatment, you're getting your conditioning, you're meeting with your coaches, you're doing organized things on the football field without the rules saying you can only do so much or you can't do it during this time. If it's set up that way where you can go home, then that may be I think that has some attractiveness to it, because you are able to get into a groove, and it's not so, especially if you're going to do away with, because I'm saying, look, to get to 18 games, if you do away with 1 or 2 preseason games and you have one preseason game where the guys get an opportunity to get their feet wet, game 2 you go through a dress rehearsal and then you get into it, where you're trying to figure out, okay, these few positions we have left available, these guys are going to get these games 1 majority of, and then some of, or maybe the majority of game 2 as well, maybe the majority of both for the guys that are on the bubble to make the roster. I think that makes a lot of sense. I really do. I don't have a problem with it. I just don't. I think we're so conditioned to think that our season starts here and it should end there. And once you go outside of them parameters, I think it's a cause for complaining. It's a cause for concern. Obviously, the first thing you think about is injury.
Well, and the other thing, I actually think this might help with injury, though, because you're able to, kind of similar, I guess I'd compare it to like an Olympic athlete, right? They really start, training for an annual peak event. And that's typically, the world championships at their sport. Now, obviously, you have to get through nationals and all those things, but they kind of builds up like that. For a lot of football players, that's how you're trying to look at it as well. The problem is you have this break, right? You basically go through this phase of we're working out, we're getting our bodies conditioned, ready to go for football. You start practicing football, and then you take this 6-week break, and then you ramp right back up into it, where it's much more intense than what you just left, right? You're hitting, you're banging, you're all those things. So I actually think this will be good for a lot of players in helping to provide them with a continual ramp up, but also none of that like letdown where, maybe we'd say like, oh, well, they have to manage their bodies better. Sure. That's always going to be the case, especially as they extend the season to an 18th game. But I actually think this could be better for a lot of athletes preparing their bodies for the punishment of an NFL season. My biggest concern is, all right, for some of these guys, their season's going to end January. End is December, January, right? What the hell are they doing for the next 6 months? Because every single time the NFLPA talks about, hey, we're giving guys the opportunity to go back and get their degree. Hey, we've got these off-season programs, these different initiatives we want them to be a part of. Here's the truth. A small percentage of players actually do it. And it wasn't because of the schedule. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. They'd rather do other things, have fun, travel, whatever. And that's great. That's their own prerogative. Like that's their own choice. If they don't want to go back and get their degree, they don't want to go back and continue their education, do an internship, do something else. So I understand the point of why they're trying to create the space. But trust me, every single off-season thing they had for us, I tried to take advantage of. Whether it was at Harvard or Wharton or Stanford, any of them, Kellogg and Northwestern. I went to all of them. I started one at Notre Dame for a few years. And a lot of those programs are gone now, which they used to be matched by the NFL. They would put in some funding for it, so would the NFLPA. The problem is they couldn't get enough attendance. And you know what it was, too, is you'd see the same guys in every single one of these programs. It will be
the same guys.
The same guys.
You're right.
And that, to me, is like part of it. If that's the motivation behind this, great. I just hope players take advantage of it because I trust you. Trust me on this. Like, they did not take advantage of this back when they had a litany of programs and opportunities for players to do this sort of thing in the offseason.